with the highlights on the gold finished, I now have no excuse not to start putting the model together. The Taurox Prime has now been assembled and it's looking pretty slick. Now we're going to go into some weathering. Once we've done the rust, I'll then get into adding some powders. We'll do oil stains later. An important thing when it comes to rust is actually comprised mainly of 3 different colors. If you go and look at any rusted piece of metal outside, it is always a good thing to do. It will show you how the rust actually forms. There's usually a very light layer where it's just starting to soak into the paint. There's then a dark layer where the rust is actually busy eating away at the metal, and then there'll be a medium colored, very small piece, usually towards the top, within those 2 colors, that shows you where the rust has actually taken hold. Like I say, go look at nature, see how it does it itself, and you'll see what I mean. For instance, on this tank here, you'll see I've got some rust, and you can see there's lighter rust there, lighter rust with darker rust near the top. Like I say, 3 colors is usually the correct way to do rust, but these are very small scale models. You can't always see it that well, and you can get by with a so-called cheat. And by that I mean you can just use a wash, and it's good enough, especially with a model like the Taurox Prime. It's so busy as it is, you don't want to have too much rust and pitting. We'll also do some pitting, and then, like I say, after protection coats, we'll actually, and I'll explain those, we'll then go into doing the oil stains. So here we have a rust wash. It must be used as a point wash. In other words, you're not going to just put this over everything, you're going to decide exactly where it needs to go. One thing that works very effectively is rivets. You'll see that rust very often forms where you've actually got a join or rivet or an edge. And maybe I should zoom in here to see if I can show you exactly the effect it has. When that dries, it's going to look very, very much like this rivet has actually got a bit of rust, and then we can actually just drag it down a bit, which is very similar to what you'd actually see happen with rust. Right, now that we've done the aging, I thought I'd show you a traditionally painted Taurox Prime compared to the camoed one. I'm sure there are going to be differences of opinion as to which one's better. I generally am a traditionalist, however my regiment very much follows this colour scheme, and therefore I'm following it. Even here you can see I have the regimental colours, and both of them are actually the same. So this one has the traditional stripe down the back, which I must admit looked very smart. However, it looks out of place unless you're going to have an entire army and regiment done in the same colours, which is what led me to think possibly I should do this. To use pigments you need a relatively stiff bristle brush, and do not have a fan on when you're doing this because this pigment goes everywhere, and this I'm hoping will create the multiple layers of rust. This is the bottom of the vehicle, so it's good for experimentation, number one, and getting used to a pigment, but also this is the area that's really going to pick up traditionally a lot of rust and dirt. Now bear in mind that this will not stay on unless you actually use a pigment binder. So once I've done this, I'll be pulling out the pigment binder, and you notice I'm going a little bit up onto the edges there, so that when you look at the model from the side, you will just see the hints of what is underneath, making it a bit more interesting. Notice how the pigment just can drop off. And this is a slightly darker pigment, which should create the look of where the rust is actually caught on. Just enough to create that grubby look. Then we're talking dirt, and when it comes to dirt, there's a slate grey that I quite like. Remember, the tracks will pull up dirt from the bottom that way. Let's see. Let's throw it up that side. And that gives me the effect I'm after. This looks like a vehicle that's been driving through the dust. Okay. So now if that's done, I will use a pigment binder and I'll spray that on, and that'll actually bind that to the vehicle. Then I'll throw this away before the dust can get everywhere. Now you don't want to spray up close because it'll blow the powder off. So you have to spray from a good 12 inches. There are a number of different ways of doing it. One of the more popular ways is using hairspray. You do a base colour on your model, the colour that you'd like to come out when you actually have the chipping. You then seal it with something like a gloss varnish. You then do your actual model colour, and when it's dry you can then take a stiff bristle brush with water and rub off that top layer, which will come off very easily with the hairspray on the bottom, and that gives a chipping effect. You can also buy chipping medium. A lot of the model makers make a chipping medium, very much the same as the hairspray. And some modelers will actually, once they've used the hairspray, will put a bit of salt, table salt, on top of the hairspray just before it dries, and then paint the colour, and that gives you a rougher exterior when you actually take that layer off. Another way of doing it, which I'm going to show now, in fact I'll do two pieces of this. So just take foam. This is material foam for stuffing pillows, things like that. Take the colour that is you want to base the model in. In other words, if there is a chip, what colour would come out? Now the bottommost layer is brown, but it is also good because it's a dark colour. So we'll do a dark colour, being the brown. Now you don't want to necessarily compress the foam. I'm just compressing the piece that I'm holding. Put a little bit of the paint on it, and then what I'm doing is I'm dabbing off the paint till I can see it's just coming off enough, so there's not much left, in a way like dry brushing. And then selecting your areas, which will usually be areas that would normally see some chipping. There you go. So that'll give you an idea of what it looks like at the moment. You can see here just some areas there on the bumpers that look like it's chipping, and there near the top. Then what you do is take whatever the lightest colour on your model is, which in this case was our highlight that we used for dry brushing as well, which was some off-white 50-50 with some dark sand. And we'll take another piece of sponge. And we'll hit those same areas with the lighter colour. And there you can see it looks like there's been wear and tear on some of the leading edges. And that is how to do chipping that easily. Do not overdo the chipping, otherwise it spoils the effect. But just in a couple leading areas like that, and it looks pretty good. There's another way of doing a more violent chipping, for instance if there's been battle damage, and that is to, and I'll do one here on the bottom of the vehicle. Let's say there's been a harsh impact on one of these ladders they've got leading in. So you do it up to the edge, just a thin streak. And then you're going to visually try and trick the eye by going alongside that streak in the lighter colour we just used. And when that dries, the effect is that somebody's taken a good slice into the steel there. That looks great if you use it on robots or dreadnoughts and things like that. I have also highlighted the insignia, and there's quite a few on the Taurus. There, the skulls, there, and there. Now what we'll do next is we'll do a protection coat. Now a lot of people don't do this with models. It can actually change a lot of the aspects of what you've painted. For instance, a lot of dry brushing will be slightly muted, so you should slightly over dry brush if you're going to put on some varnish. Matte varnish has a very low protection factor. It's still better than nothing. Satin varnish has a fairly good protection factor, and gloss varnish has the best. Gloss, though, does not really look very realistic and really just takes away a lot of the effects. So you only want to use gloss where it comes to things like the headlamps and stuff like that. I use the satin varnish. Well, now that we've added in all our weathering effects, all that really remains is for us to bring out the bits that are gloss. So the bits that are meant to have that extra gloss layer, obviously going to be there's a little light cupola over there, the headlamps, there's lamps there, and there's lamps in the back of the vehicle. Now you could just paint it with gloss varnish as opposed to the satin varnish we used to protect the model. I personally prefer using a glazing medium. This gives you that extra amount of bling. You can even use a glazing medium to actually build up layers. You can also add this glazing medium to a matte paint and it becomes a gloss paint. So that said, this is very thick. You don't have to shake it. Number one brush should be fine. And there you have it. Our Taurox Prime, all camoed, weathered, looking good. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed that. Please just give the video a like if you got something out of it. And good modelling. Cheers.